Hello, everyone. I'm Claude of Beyond Mystic, and welcome to this deep woo-woo episode of Nostradamus and the Vortex of Time. With me today, of course, is none other than Jay Weidner. You can find his work at Reality Check here on YouTube and also on the web at jweidner.com. Jay, welcome back to the show.
Hey, good to be here. Glad to see you guys.
Glad to have you on. And of course, guys, please welcome Julie from Maison Jupiter here on YouTube. You can also find her on the web at maisonjupiter.com. Julie, welcome back to the show.
Hey, you two. Nice to see you.
I am excited for this episode, guys, here today. We had so many great comments from the first inaugural episode of Nostradamus and the Vortex of Time. Of course, during that episode, we talked about this famous quatrain, the 392, and how perhaps the astrology was lining up for a lot of things happening currently in Europe. So if you guys haven't seen the show, please do go ahead and watch that episode from a couple of weeks ago. You guys are going to be blown away. Today, we're going to be talking more about the two recurring main characters that come up in the Nostradamus quatrains. The first one being the genius, and the second one being the Antichrist. And so we're going to try to plot all of that with you guys throughout history, through philosophy and theology as well. And of course, the conversation between the astrological mind of Julie and the deep esoteric mind of Jay Weidner is going to make for a fabulous episode. Before we get into all of that, in the last episode, Julie explained the synchronicities of how she got involved with the Nostradamus teachings. And only did, after I stopped the recording of the last show, did Jay tell us his synchronicities. I'm like, oh my God, you should have said that during the show. So I want to take this opportunity, Jay, to have you share with the audience members here today how you got connected with all of this amazing field of history.
Well, I had been studying alchemy and Fulcanelli, and, brushed up occasionally against Nostradamus. I knew who he was and all that. I wasn't completely ignorant of him. But in 1999, Vincent and I went to France to do the major research for our first book, A Monument to the End of Time, Alchemy, Fulcanelli, and the Great Cross, which is like $800 on Amazon right now. Mm-hmm. I was exhausted. We were going on separate flights because we're going to different cities. And I got to the airport, I had my backpack, and I was really tired, ready to just pass out on the flight back. And I put my backpack on the seat, which in those days was okay. It was before 9/11, so you could go to the bathroom and come back 10 minutes later in Paris and the Paris airport, and you wouldn't have to worry about anything getting stolen. It was a completely different time at that time. So I go to the bathroom, leave my backpack there. Nobody cares. I come back and there's a book by David Oveson called The Secrets of Nostradamus. It's about this thick, 350, 400 pages, and it's sitting on my backpack. And I'm like, what? Who did this? Right? And I have to preface all this by saying that both Vincent and I thought we were being followed the whole entire 3-week trip. We kept seeing the same people, even though we were in Carcassonne, we'd see the guy. Then we'd go to Provence, we'd see the same guy. And we're like, wait a minute. France is a big enough country where this shouldn't be happening. And so we were actually a little paranoid the whole last week, because what we were doing the last week, believe it or not, was we were looking for the secret castle that the alchemists live in. So we knew from Fulcanelli that there was a castle in the Pyrenees that was where they take children and young adults and they teach them high mystical alchemical principles. J.K. Rowling ripped this off in the Harry Potter series. It was written long ago, long before J.K. Rowling was like maybe 15 when this story finally surfaced. So we were literally trying to find it. We're using glyphs and graphs and trying to find this house. We even stayed in Nostradamus's house in Provence, which was another weird and strange experience. But anyway, so I got this book and I was really freaked out because then I thought somebody is following me and they want me to read this book. And so I got on the plane and I opened up the book, fully intending to sleep for 8 hours. And I read the entire book by the time we landed. in Denver, and I read the whole book. I couldn't stop reading it, and I was completely hooked on Nostradamus. And then, ironically, I guess, and parenthetically, soon after that, I got a call. I've been interviewed by the History Channel for alchemy, the Georgia Guidestones, that kind of stuff. But in only a couple interviews, then I get this call from some woman producer, and she says, "We're doing a show on Nostradamus, and we want you on." And I said, "What?" I'm like, "What? I just read the book." And then I went on, and then suddenly I became a Nostradamus expert, and I was on like every show that anybody ever did on Nostradamus. I have to say, I was a little bit embarrassed to be sharing, the stage with some of the premier Nostradamus scholars on Earth, and I think they kind of thought I was maybe a little bit of a piker, rising up above my ranks.
Right.
But and so there was a little tension there between me and the other Nostradamus scholars. But it was an amazing experience, and it really taught me that Nostradamus, whereas time seems and appears to be linear, going from the past to the future in the ever present now, he kind of shows you that actually you can look into the past and into the future and see events. How he's doing that, we knew he scried with water and all that, but how he actually did it is incredible. It proves that we are part of a larger whole that he was just able to get a hold of. And again, he just saw brief glimpses, right, of things. I mean, he didn't quite understand a lot of times what he was actually seeing. So,
wow.
The other thing about Nostradamus that I really like is how he hides the quatrains, the secrets in the quatrains, until after the events happen. So yeah, you can't change history. He's making sure that you cannot change the future. He only wants you to know that I know what happened here, that you're not going to figure it out until after the event. Right. So, so he has the famous quatrain, the king of terror shall come from the skies, and war will come in September of 1999. And everybody's on September 99. We're all on edge. There was a comet in the sky, and everybody was like really on edge, and we were all worried and everything. And then nothing happened.
Right.
We're like, what? And then 2 years later, on September 2001, something did happen exactly like he described, right?
Yeah.
So what is the secret here? Well, the secret is really simple. You take 1999 and you invert it. And it comes out 9111. The exact date was there, but he doesn't want you to know it until afterwards. So you could not have prevented 9/11 with Nostradamus's quatrain, exactly what he intended.
Fascinating. Well, thank you for that. Let me ask you a redirect here. Did you ever find out who gave you the book?
Nope.
No.
But I was contacted by a French secret society about, I think in like 2002, maybe. And they were asking me, first they asked me about 100 questions, of which I didn't want to really answer, but finally I did. It took me about a year to answer them. And then I started getting all these weird inquiries about a lot of weird stuff. And then I finally started asking questions back because I wasn't going to give them free info. And I started asking questions back, and they didn't want to answer my questions. And so I broke off all relations. But I have had, several close encounters with French alchemists and French alchemical societies since that encounter. So I'm thinking that somehow, because we know the CIA was really into Fulcanelli, so they were watching us maybe because they didn't want Fulcanelli's secrets to get out. And now we kind of know why, because Fulcanelli's talking about, a catastrophe at the end of time, and they don't want us to panic or anything. They just want us to go on our merry way while they build their underground bases and build their secret space program to get out of here and all that. So they want us to be quiet. So I can understand why they didn't want Fulcanelli. So I think what they did was they probably tapped our phones or something, and they knew what we were going to do, what our plans were, because we were very definite about what we were going. And we were going to all the hot spots in France. I mean, literally, we spent 24 days 15 hours a day, no sleep at all, hardly, going to All Saints Sulpice and Notre Dame and Lalamont Mansion and everywhere. All these alchemical houses that old alchemists lived in. And so I think that they were worried about that. And then I think they dropped the Nostradamus book on me as to cause me to stop looking at Fulcanelli and start looking at Nostradamus.
A little bit of a redirect.
Nostradamus, I wouldn't be able to figure out what I was doing because his quatrains are so hard to decipher.
Right. Wow. Fascinating. Okay, Julie, you're nodding your head. Anything you want to add to that before we get into the subject matter today?
Well, it's interesting because I wanted to start with the quatrain you were referring to, Jay, the one that he did mention the year 1999, because it's very rare in Nostradamus quatrains that he mentions a date or an actual year. So that one, I think, was famous for that because we knew it was about to come. And I totally agree with you. I think it also pertains to 9/11, but I think it might also have another meaning, maybe. So I'm going to share that with you today.
Okay, really good. I appreciate that. Hold on a second there, Julie. Also, I met this fellow a couple of years ago, and at that time I had read the Da Vinci Code way back when it had first gotten out, and I remember going to it wasn't Chapters, I think it was Indigo, and back in those days, anyways, here in Ottawa, at my lunch hour to get the book, and I read it at my lunch hour, page to page, before I went back to work. I was just so mesmerized by it. And somebody was just asking in the chat, Jay, was this a secret society perhaps connected to the Prieuré of Sion, as Walter Pell is saying here? What's the connection there, perhaps, with all of that, Jay? Just very briefly here before we get into the decode for today.
Well, the Prieuré de Sion, they came on real fast about 30 years ago, and then they just faded out and nobody talks about them anymore. I think that they are the primary occult secret society of France, actually, and probably Italy and Spain and all of the Latin European countries. And they're whatever they want, they get. I mean, they wanted a united Europe in the 70s. They came out and said it, and they got it. They're very powerful. They're connected to the Templars because we know the Templars were at Mount Sion in Jerusalem. That was where their temple was, the first temple. And so I would say that they are Priory, the leaders of the Templars or the Knights of Sion. And, Da Vinci was supposedly one of them, and many great people were part of it. And Poussin, the painter, seems to be associated with it. Father Saunier, he found the treasure probably in 1891 in Rennes-le-Château, or in that area anyway, which is a very spooky area, by the way. And so I think that they are the ones that are probably. Fulcanelli intimates that there is a secret society living a medieval type life, just like in Harry Potter, that the Illuminati wants to destroy. And so it must remain secret at all costs because they have the secret of long life, and the Illuminati, that's all they care about. They've got all the money, they got everything else. All they care about now is long life. I guarantee it. I've been told by many of them. So this group has the one ace in the hole that they want. And so they're denying them that. So what I've been told is that this group meets in this castle, and the 13 masters, alchemist masters, they meet in this castle. And I believe Nostradamus was a member of this group, probably of the 13, and they influence the world. They seek out souls that they can influence, and probably at night during the dream state, they're probably coming in, implanting things into our brain and making us do things that go up against the bad guys. So the bad guys are totally confused as how Jay Weidner got a hold of all this information. It's completely verboten. And how does he get it? And they're probably pulling their hair out. And everybody else that has this information, they're probably really trying to understand where it's coming from. And they know what I just said. They know that's going on, but they can't do anything about it because they can't control the astral realms where these guys are doing their work, and these guys are such masters. They're not guys, they're women too. They're such people don't realize that alchemy was invented by women. It was invented by Isis the prophetess and Mary the Jewess. They were the two very first people who brought alchemy to the world. All right, and so this council has women in it too, and this is the whole nature of what's going on in the world today. The waking up is a result of exactly what these guys are doing. And then they're telling people like me, like, now you go do it. We got you into this state. Now you go do it. Right. And then, they say, don't be afraid. And they teach you that there's an afterlife, and that, if you do a lot of good in this life, then you will get, a really wonderful return on your investment, you might say. Right. So that is what I believe. And I believe, yes, it is the Prior de Sion that is behind maybe all of it.
What's fascinating there also, as you mentioned, the Illuminati, they have everything else, but they want eternal life. And something tells me, of course, that this secret society is still very much secret, and they haven't attained it. They're still going the AI route. And this will bring us into the Stanley Kubrick decodes, 2001 Space Odyssey and all that. So they're still chasing that. But what was interesting of what you just said about influencing our dreams, there's this new show on Netflix called Falling Water. And this is basically people engage in manipulating our reality through dreamscape. They enter other people's dreams, they dreams together. It's very fascinating. It's funny you just mentioned it that now. I mentioned it last week on the show. And guys, go see the show. There's a lot there for you guys. But let's get back to our storyboard here today. Julie, where do you want to set up? Which slide do you want me to bring up first here as we start this decode for this Nostradamus show here today?
Well, first I'll just introduce my general idea for today. So I was reading a whole bunch of quatrains and also the book still from Dolores Cannon explaining through people in trance having more cues about what he meant with the quatrains. So basically an help to decipher what he really meant. So I was going through that and I saw a whole bunch of quatrains mentioning the Antichrist or some sort of character that was like the ultimate evil. And so he was going to come, and then he was very described as an individual, very much physical in the physical reality. So I went through a whole bunch of those quatrains, but I was trying to map where he would come in our timeline. Because I'm like, with all the dates that we had and all the astrology that I see in the background, I didn't see him coming at this point of where we are in this transition between the worlds. So I kind of develop a theory, and I don't know if other people came with the same theory before me, because I'm fairly new to this whole Nostradamus thing. But I was like, what if this Antichrist that's being portrayed is not an individual, but rather an energy, more like the age of Pisces energy, or a group of individuals trying to utilize this age of Pisces energy. And that's where I think Nostradamus might have portrayed the Antichrist as this age of Pisces energy. And then he also mentions this genius character quite a few times in a few quatrains that would come after the Antichrist, trying to save us basically with technology, with being the antidote of the Antichrist. So I was like, interesting that genius is ruled by Aquarius in astrology. So to me, it portrays to the age of Aquarius. So, and because those ages are so big, they're about 2,500 years, we're still overlapping in between both the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius. So if you want to put up the first slide.
Yep.
JC, thank you so much. So Jay was talking about this quatrain where he gives the 9/11 date, September 1999. So he was talking about this king of terror, which can also be thought as the coming of the Antichrist. So it was prophesied for 1999 if you read it literally, but also, as Jay was saying, it could be inverted as to 9/11. so I was like, okay, so outside of 9/11, something big also might have happened. So I was thinking, what if this Antichrist was rather an energy more than an individual? And very interestingly, in astrology, when we're at the end of an era, so let's say the end of Pisces, it says that the opposite sign of Pisces, so in this case Virgo, we're coming into a sub era of Virgo, more portraying the negative traits of Virgo. So to me, Pisces equals Christ consciousness, because Pisces rules everything that is oneness, force, energy, Christ consciousness. And if you go with the opposite of it, so that would be the bad, let's say the bad traits of Virgo, which is to compartimenter, help me.
Compartmentalize.
Thank you. That word. So that would be for me the sub era of Virgo that we're actually into now. So so I wrote what if it's actually an energy, so the dark side of the energies of Pisces, but also the dark side of the sub era of Virgo. And maybe since the age of Pisces began at around the birth of Jesus, so let's say about 2,000 years ago, maybe at the same times as we had this Christ consciousness energy coming onto Earth, maybe we had also the opposite coming. So this Antichrist type of energy that would be more manifesting in our reality, since we're in the sub era of Virgo, which is the more negative qualities of it as we're moving into the next era. So maybe, and also Nostradamus said a couple of times that this Antichrist character would be coming from the Middle East. So is he talking about the Khazarian mafia? Is he talking about the Anunnakis from Egypt? Maybe all of those answers, maybe because they're utilizing this energy.
That's right.
And also this genius appearing, because he kind of said that this genius would be the antidote of this Antichrist. So genius for me would be, this antidote would be utilizing the good side of the age of Aquarius to heal what is dysfunctional about the age of Pisces. So very quickly, I'll just read one of the passages of the book where he explains. So it says, this genius will be the antidote to the Antichrist. The development he does and the effects it will have upon the world and the population in general will be those foretold by people envisioning the age of Aquarius. He says, as a result of this, a worldwide peace will be imminent. People will be able to free their inner selves and open themselves up to the higher powers and higher levels of the universe. In fact, it will make every person a philosopher, as they will be opening these things, whereas before only philosophers were. So to me, it's very interesting because he talks about this distribution and sharing of the sacred knowledge, which is very much Aquarian. Aquarius wants to get the knowledge out there, make it more accessible to everybody, because it's a sign that rules equality and the sharing, and also the higher mind. So not being blindsided by false belief systems, which can be the dark side of Pisces, being ruled by Jupiter.
Wow, that's fascinating. You just mentioned something here too, and I want Jay to chime in. First of all, Jay, you were nodding your head there. I'll let you add some comments to that. But that last part where you said people will be able to connect maybe to your higher self and to universal information or to source field, I think that has something to do with perhaps the last 2 years, where maybe the people who know this are trying to prevent exactly that connection to our higher self and getting into being the knowledge bearer here in the age of Aquarius. Jay, what do you make of that last slide? How would you add some context here for the audience?
Well, I did what I very rarely do. I took notes on it. Well, when we when we did the show, The Lost Book of Nostradamus with the History Channel, we got to read this lost book that they thought was probably attributed to Nostradamus' son. And in there, he says exactly what we just heard. There is the dark forces enter in September 1999, which could be 2001 too, in that period. And then there's a counterforce that comes in. Clearly in the Lost Book, he says there's a counterforce that is going to arise against the Antichrist, which is this dark force. And this dark force, so through the age of Pisces, we had what Christianity was kind of like, it kept us from killing each other as slower than normal. You know, that's what Christianity really did. It stopped us from killing each other less than we would normally do. So the Antichrist is the opposite of that, and will rise up at the end of that part of the time. And so the Antichrist is rising now, just like Rudolf Steiner said, and it's a force. It's not a man. It's not a person. It's a force, and it gets in you, and you can see it. It's like an insanity. When you watch television or watch the news, it's an insanity. I watched a guy yesterday go on for 5 minutes on a subject that I know about, and every single thing he said was untrue. You know, there's this guy, a scientist. His name was Gell-Mann. I'm just going to go off a little bit here. Gell-Mann was a physicist, and he created what is called the Gell-Mann effect. And what the Gell-Mann effect was that Gell-Mann only understood physics. So every time he watched the news or read the newspaper and saw something about physics, he paid attention to it because he knew the subject. And he said they were always wrong, always. So he figured that everything that he was reading in the news was wrong. It's now called the Gell-Mann effect because nobody knows what they're talking about. And then also, hang on, I can't read my writing. It's going so fast. Oh, and then the Hindus have, of course, the Kalki avatar, which is the male version of Kali, which comes, and clearly it says that I'm not here to teach. I'm not here to convert. I'm here to destroy those guys. That's what it says clearly. And Kalki avatar will appear right before this age, and this age, of course, is represented by a man with a water pitcher, and I believe it's the only zodiacal age that has represented by a man. And so I think that there's a force coming, which is they cannot recognize. Again, this group is behind it, and they cannot recognize it. Nostradamus knew it, and the genius is this opposite group. The group that is working in unison to open up everybody's mind to all this new information. Yeah, some heads are going to blow up. Sorry about that. You know, some people are going to go crazy when they hear what's actually going on, and we're sorry about that. But it's our duty to tell everybody, you know, what is actually going on a spiritual level. And I totally agree with your interpretation. Genius is this. Well, what genius really means. And the Antichrist is this force that absolutely cannot stand people loving each other, helping each other.
Yeah,
you can see it. They can't stand it right now in the United States. Somebody came out, some pro fascist during the last 2 years, wanted everybody locked down. Everything. She came out and asked for amnesty for all those people. And we're like, no. You said that you wanted to throw us in jail. You said you wanted to take our children.
Yeah.
Wow.
The stakes are so high, and you can see, and it's building up right now in the United States. This force, the genius force, is really on fire. Like I've never seen it in my entire life. And the Antichrist force, which is really strong here, looks scared, frankly.
Mm-hmm. I think also if you look at the footage from Brazil just last couple of days ago, those energies are very much at play right now. I'm going to see if I can bring up the file for you guys. But could you imagine something similar to this popping up here just next week on November 8th? It's going to be absolutely crazy. Julie, any redirect on that slide before we move to the next one here? We have
we can move to the next one. Thank you, Jay, for that. That was very interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good confirmation to the flash that I have sometimes.
Good, very good.
Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to dive into more of the archetype of the Age of Pisces for people maybe not aware of the astrology component to it. So the Age of Pisces started around, as we said, the birth of Jesus as a as a spiritual teacher, because the sign of Pisces is ruled traditionally by the planet Jupiter, which rules faith, spiritual beliefs, spiritual teachers, and also gurus. So it's the age that's being very much characterized by the rise of the great religions. Faith was very important, and also fighting for your faith. So with, as I said earlier, with the introduction of the Christ consciousness, I think there's also its duality that's been materialized here on Earth. So one of the few Pisces themes here, so religions, also the sacrifice of the self for a greater cause. So that's very interesting, I think, because it's very much a Pisces theme. So sacrificing your own identity, your own values, your own thoughts, because you're wanting to join a greater force. Wow. So I think the idea and the force behind it is not a bad one, but I think it's been utilized against a lot of people, because they were like, forget your rights, forget your own needs, forget your own desires, and join this religion and believe that. And so there's been a lot of hijacking of this sacrifice theme, which is very, very much linked to Pisces.
Super important. Wow. That is it. What they did was they inverted our own ability to be charitable and to even die for the group. And then they said, you will do this. And then they forced it on us. And a lot of people, actually, that was what they said. I'm doing this for everybody. I don't want to do this, but I'm doing it for everybody. So You're right. I've never thought of that before, how they inverted this really quite charitable asset into their own weapon against us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course it could be used for good, because it's such a great quality to be able to sacrifice yourself for a greater cause. But if you're tricked into something that's actually not for our collective highest good, then it's something else, right?
Well, let's take a sidebar here also and talk about groups coming together. Now, again, I'm going to try not to trip any trigger words here, but in the last 2 years, we've been separated. So there's a big energy trying to disperse what is commonly known as the scalar effect that humans have when we come together. So there's that effect in person, in physicality, but there's also that effect here on YouTube and other platforms. When we get together to share this informational field, to share the love frequency, we do have a scalar effect. Now, Jay, you've been victim of different things on different platforms, so have I. And it begs to wonder, is it the words that we're saying that's really pissing them off, or is it the fact that we're reaching a scalar effect by doing these types of shows? Try to answer that, Jay, without tripping too many words here for the YouTube community.
I mean, I've been watching it now for really. I'm long enough lived to have lived in the world before this was going on, but I started about 35 years ago, and they began, you didn't want to go to a bar to meet your friends anymore because you're afraid you're going to get a DUI. So you stopped doing that. You used to go to meetings, but then all that stopped. Then the internet came in and stopped all community activity, and we all moved to the internet, where we're not talking and looking at each other. We're communicating in effective ways, but not totally effective. And slowly, it's like slicing a salami. They're removing us from community, removing us until the salami's gone, which is what they're hoping that we're not going to notice. And so, that's exactly what's going on. And I don't think they don't like the information we're giving out, but what they really hate is the fact that we are doing, because they got the real stats, not the ones they give us. They're watching everything in real time. They know that they're all coming to us, that they're all watching us. That's what's going on here. I know, because I can tell by how many thousands of people will watch one of my interviews, but the response is way beyond the 4,500. And also the responses from, big people, like, people you would know about, people that have been on this show, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm like thinking, well, that's weird that, and then I'll actually see effects of what I have on my show in real time in the world. For instance, this is really fascinating. I was on a show a couple of weeks ago, and this guy asked me what I thought of the secret space program. And I told him that, I think it's in Antarctica. I think they're building a giant ark over Antarctica where they're all going to get in their ship and escape before the sun explodes and go wherever they're going, right? And, and that was it. That's all I said. 3 days later, Harari, the guru for Klaus Schwab, came out and said something, I'll paraphrase, the elites don't always do what we want. They do what they want. And they're going to make a giant ark and get out of here. And we're going to have to deal with the flood that happens. Right?
Wow.
Like, what? He just admitted it. And then you realize, of course, these guys have to tell you what they're doing. That's
Right.
part of their religion. They
Right.
must tell you. And so, yeah, I think that we're moving into a really strange time period where the war between Aquarius and Pisces is going to get very heated.
Well, this Saturn-Uranus square, yes, the representation of that. And guys, if you want more of that crazy insight Jay was just talking about, go check him out here, of course, on Reality Check on YouTube, where you can find all of his latest videos there. And please do remember to subscribe and hit the like button if you like his content. Okay, Julie, third slide for today. Let me see if I can bring this up. You mentioned earlier okay, go ahead. You want to redirect
Let's
first?
go back to the Pisces one.
Okay, here you go.
Thank you. So yeah, we were saying a sacrifice of the self. So sacrificing in general, sacrifices is a theme for Pisces. So I know there's been a lot of ritual sacrifices in many cults and religions. Well, that's very much Pisces. And the theme of devotioning to a god, to something that's higher up, also it's a Pisces theme. It can also rule secret groups. Also victimhood, being caught in a victim mentality state or a victim karmic mentality. So that could be very hard to get out of, since it's very much the energy of Pisces. Well, the more negative one, let's say. Also, it could rule this world, and I am not going to say, so CABAL. Addictions in general is ruled by Pisces, and we know it's been one of the dark sides very much present since the last 2-3 years, more than ever. So also it rules pharmaceuticals, and I think the two are linked. So there's a lot of trying to check out of reality with some substance abuse. It could be alcohol, it could be drugs, but also pharmaceuticals, to really try to numb you and not being as connected with your divine self. And also illusions, which is also linked to, very interestingly, mainstream media. So Pisces is linked to mainstream media because it keeps the illusion going on, basically. So we spoke about Jupiter being the traditional ruler, and then the modern ruler is Neptune of Pisces. So Neptune equals water. So there's a use of water for religious rituals. So we know it's a very used mean for many religions. So baptism, one of them, and also blessings in general. So the longing also for merging with the oneness. So I think in our modern society, it has been the obsession for romantic love as a void filler, but also a way to connect with the divine. So I think this is one of the big ones in the age of Pisces. Also the illusions of the 3D, and also mass manipulation and mass hypnosis through mainstream media is part of the Pisces energy. So we can switch to the next one. So I'm explaining more.
Can I interject there? You just meant something about obsession with romantic love to fill the void. Now, in Taoist terms, when you're in divine union, this is when you open up that gate between heaven and earth. Jay, do you want to explain that very quickly? That concept of filling the void, we're taught to do this one way through our schooling system, to the pornography and all of that stuff, our religious system, but we have no idea of how actually powerful that divine union is in terms of opening up that gate and strengthening the channel to source. Explain that very briefly here to the audience members.
Well, it's really what you might call physical alchemy. And so, you take two opposites and you unite. And if you know what you're doing, probably can't get into that detail too much on this show, but if you know what you're doing, you can create a very, very powerful plasma force around the two people if they're in the right, doing the right thing. And this can really have a huge effect on the community and on your neighbors. And it's been, scientifically verified, but science won't look at the evidence. But couples that are doing the right alchemical things have more grass growing in their yard. They have more flowers growing. The trees are bigger. I'm not kidding you. John Michel, the great English, cultist, he looked at into this, and the more loving that a family, more loving a family was, but more loving a couple was, the more life just seemed to be. More birds would be in the trees around their house, and it's in India. Supposedly they could use their connection to source via certain sexual practices, and literally make a village disappear. So the marauding soldiers would just run right by the village and not see it. And this is all through Vedic lore. And so the tantric couple would be the most revered of all the people in the town. And, they would be treated like gods, and men would lay their cloaks out for them so they wouldn't get mud on them. And it's a really amazing tradition. And my wife, Sharon, is a super expert in this tradition. About 15 of those books back there are on that tradition from India. And by the way, I have a book from of these same practices in medieval Europe. The same things written out in books, how to do everything and all things. So this is not just to India. This is all over the world.
It's no wonder why this Antichrist force is trying to suppress that, because again, that energy is key to our freedom, key to our abundance, and that's the exact opposite of what they're trying to do. They're trying to usurp our energy to create this prison that we all create for ourselves.
That's right. And there's a statistic that 40% of all women by 2030 will be childless and manless, right? That that's women's liberation, which is a Piscean thing. And I'm all for women making the same money as men and all that. But that's a disaster. That's a spiritual disaster.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Let's try not to get too much in trouble with the Kundalini conversations. You and I have had trouble with that before, Jackie. So let's move on here to the sub-age of Virgo. Julie,
it's funny because I think you guys are gonna. I like that because I was going there on the bottom of that slide.
Okay.
I'll try to stay with the words that we are allowed to say.
Okay. Yep.
So I was saying, when we're at the end of an era, the opposite sign is expressing itself, but more of the negative trace of that sign. So as we're at the end of this age of Pisces, we're also into this sub-age of Virgo. And if you want to learn more about it, it's all described in that book. It's called Finding Our Center, and I'll give you the full credentials for that. It's by Heather Answorth, PhD.
Do you want to just show that on the screen, on the big screen
Sure.
again, just so people can take a snapshot there? I'll try to put that in the links below after. Okay.
Finding Our Center.
Okay.
It's like a small book, but very, very packed with interesting information about astrology. So the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius are now overlapping. Okay, so we know that. So yes, sub-age of Virgo. So the dark side of Virgo, so the very dark side, I'm just warning you here. And you'll see that these are the themes that we're experiencing right now. So first of all, WAR, that word I'm not allowed to say here. Second, slavery, which is very much something that we're experiencing right now. Also disease, because Virgo rules the physical body and also health. So if we're at the negative end of it, we're experiencing more disease, and also the fear of disease, which is maybe more let's say scary than the actual disease. So the obsession with health and illnesses is very much a dark side of Virgo. Also eugenics in general, so messing up with the DNA, human DNA. Also, attempting to over control our environment and our bodies. That's a dark side of Virgo. Also, it rules depth. We all know that our countries are very much into it. Also, it rules overworking, because Virgo rules working in general. So when you're in the negative scale of it, you overdo things more in the 3D, and it keeps you in that hamster wheel, and you're not being very much aware of the spiritual reality that coexists with your 3D reality. So the overemphasis on the physical body and material reality, but it's also an unbalanced focus on the 3D day-to-day routine. Also, another theme of, let's say, the sub-age of Virgo is sexuality is no longer a pathway to the sacred, but can become a manipulation of others for personal gain. So I think that's pretty much a theme that we're all seeing right now. And that's from the book I just showed you, Finding Our Center. So because Virgo, with the higher frequency of the sign, is an initiate of the esoteric art. So it knows how to utilize the physical body in order to connect with the divine. So when you're blocked from this higher frequency of Virgo and you're experiencing only the lower frequencies, then you see things very much separate from each other. So that's the case also with the way we're experiencing sexuality. Mm-hmm. And the deeper integration of the Pisces-Virgo axis is about the integration of the mind, body, and spirit in a way in which we understand that we are part of the wholeness of life and are in service to the divine, while honoring our uniqueness of our incarnation and the divinity of everyone and everything around us. So that's also from the book.
Wow, fascinating. Jay, any thoughts on that? You're nodding your head.
Well, I have a book in my library, a very rare book, came out at about 1971 maybe, and it was written very, very like almost a pamphlet. And in this book, the guy claims, he's a high up corporate guy. He claims that he went to a meeting of bigwigs. Not going to say any more than that, but bigwigs, and they decided that from that moment on, they were going to turn sexuality from love between a man and a woman into free entertainment. And he was really appalled. That's why he wrote the book. And he said, "You would not believe what I heard, what they plan to do to the human race." And he went into all the things that have occurred since 1970. And it was all listed in there, and I'll never forget it. And every once in a while, I read this book just to remind myself that this is not an organic thing that's going on around us. This is a planned thing so that the most powerful union in the world, the most powerful spiritual union in the world, is aborted. Mm-hmm. What I think.
Wow. And
fascinating. Go ahead, Julie. Sorry.
For sure, they know astrology, so they utilize the energy.
Yeah.
So it can benefit their agenda and not ours, for sure.
I was going to say it's fascinating yet frustrating at the same time to realize the extent of which we're being messed with at all of these levels. And I think part of the reason we're doing these shows is to share that with people, because once you know what people are doing to you and you can recognize the tactics that are being used against you, you could say, no, this far, no further, but you have to recognize that first. And this is why we're being spun, as Ginny said, into this material world where there's no balance. We're watching all of these entertainment and we're not really focusing and centering ourselves. That's the last thing they want us to do. Fascinating. Okay. Patricia Lee says, "This is so amazing. Thank you." Yes, I appreciate that too. My jaw dropped a couple of times already in this show. Patricia, thank you for those comments. And guys, if you like the show, please do hit the like button. Okay, Julie, we have 2 more slides. Yes, we have 2 more slides to go through. Let's go through the architectural archetype of the age of Aquarius here, as we just mentioned, Pisces. Let's get into this one here.
Yeah, let's move into the lighter side of this conversation. So the antidote of this Antichrist energy is the genius. So genius is ruled in astrology by Aquarius. But what's also very interesting, in my opinion, about Aquarius is that with any of the zodiac signs, you have a higher expression of the archetype, but also a lower expression or the archetype. So our collective free will is deciding, are we going to manifest the highest expression of the sign or the lowest expression? So the dual nature of Aquarius and the choice path opening to us. So I remember we did talk about this choice path in the previous episode. So the first choice would be inorganic technology supporting the disconnection of the human from his heart and his natural environment, the earth. So when you're expressing Aquarius in a, let's say, unbalanced way, you're too much in the brain, and that's creating an emotional disconnection from the heart. So that would be, let's say, the lower frequency expression of Aquarius. So we can add in this category AI, digital identity, because it rules technology, but technology being used not to connect us even more together and with ourselves and our divine nature, but disconnect us from our divine nature. So the second choice would be using technology, because Aquarius in both options deals with technology and advancement. So that would be using technology and technological advancement to benefit human freedom, which is another one of the Aquarian themes, and interconnectivity. So in the book of Dolores Cannon, he mentions Nostradamus, this organic computer. So I thought it was very much a high frequency Aquarian theme, and also turning technology as a support for organic reconnection. So let's say that could be helping with farming, that could be technology used to help us be more healthy, connect even more with each other, and not being ostracized from society. So one of the points that she wrote, Dolores Cannon, in the book, and I thought it was interesting. So he said that Nostradamus' prophecies were creating to give us a chance to see the worst timelines and use our free will to try to avoid them. So he did not write this to be proven right, apparently. So I thought I would just put it in there. And Uranus, which is the ruling planet of Aquarius, rules the higher brain. So that's the higher octave of the planet Mercury, which rules the lower brain, more of like the different daily tasks that we have to think. So our thoughts, our words, the way we express ourselves, the way we make short-term plans. So that would be Mercury. But the higher octave of it is Uranus. So the ability to really interconnect different information together and see the big picture. And also science is ruled, true science, I have to say, is ruled by Uranus. So as we're moving into this age of Aquarius, we're also upgrading the way we are using our brain. So we're not just in this monkey brain, lower brain anymore of Mercury. We're moving into this higher brain and higher intellectual capacities of the higher mind, Aquarius, but also connecting in the heart. So that's, I think, the main point we have to remember here. And the Aquarius, as Jay was saying earlier, is the water bearer. So it's the archetype is represented as the water bearer. So that's the distribution of knowledge and also sacred knowledge. So not being used only by the elites anymore, but being distributed for everybody to be able to create their own reality.
Very good. Jay, let's talk about that here. The choice that is before us, the choice that, or the fake illusion of choice that is before us here in our matrix, but the real choice that we have to make for ourselves between going towards this organic evolution of mankind versus the AI version of things that are being pushed and that were decoded also in our episode there of 2001 and Space Odyssey with the Kubrick films. Explain that choice in your words here and share it in a way so that people watching the show can share that with their friends and family and say, aha, that's really what we need to concentrate on right now. It's not the November 8 election. There's bigger things at play here. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, you know, several times in the quatrains, Nostradamus talks about a great bifurcation that happens with mankind. and he's kind of oblique and kind of hazy about it. So it's, I'd have to go back into it, but I remember reading it, and that's what we're in right now. So the age of Aquarius is, we're going to break into two different societies. There's going to be the urban society, which is going to be all hooked into the grid, and they're going to be on the AI, and they're all going to be watched, and they're going to take their self-driving cars to work, or if there even is work, and all of that. And then there's going to be the people that are right now fleeing the cities and coming out to the country where I am. And believe me, we're getting a lot of people out here. It's almost getting irritating. And they're a completely different breed. They want nothing to do with that. They're coming out here. They like technology. We are not anti-technology. We love technology, but we want technology to work for us, not us work for it. And so we're using technology to perfect our gardens, our greenhouse growings, our schooling. We're going to have to go back to homeschooling. We're going to all have to dig in and help teach the children of the community everything that we know, and we're not going to get paid for it. It's going to be volunteer. This is where we're going now, and it's hit full tilt boogie. I mean, it's you can feel it. It's like a movement, and people are fleeing, and it's the right people that are fleeing. That's what's interesting. It's a self-selected group of people that have decided they want nothing more to do with the Piscean age, and they're leaving. And they go out and they're going to carve their own world with their own community, and the supply chain breaking down is all part of this. You're not going to have these big, huge, massive chains and gigantic organizations, and that's Piscean. That's not going to happen. It's not the way it's going to be. And we're going to move to a much smaller, quieter, more friendly place. And then there's going to be the war between the AI people and us. And that's going to be the end of the Pisceans. And then the Aquarians will fully advance and take over. But that's not for hundreds of years. So this thing's got a long way to go. We're only at the beginning of it. We're the first soldiers in the war, you might say.
Mm-hmm. The blunt instruments trying to get through the main gate, so to speak. I want to bring this up and see what your take is on this also, Jay. In the last show, let me see if I can get this off the screen here. In the last show, I had mentioned I had used a choice of words of going towards the evolution of our angelic nature as humans versus the AI version of where the bad guys want us to go. And I was corrected in the chat by none other than Cliff High the next day. And he says, Jean-Claude, you Canadian, watch your language. He says, if you read the Bible, the actual Bible, you would never refer to anything positive as angelic ever again. He says, you need to learn to read Hebrew. Jay, educate me on that a little bit. I was like kind of struck back. I think I know what he meant, and I think he knew what I meant. But here again, linguistics in the age of Aquarius is very important. Choosing the right words with the right frequencies is very important. So let's correct the trajectory there and see your point of view on that use of angelic there, as Cliff was mentioning.
I think Cliff is probably referring to the Nephilim, which was the original angels, you might say. But I think you're talking about it's a very Catholic idea. And I was raised Catholic, so I know all about it. And it's this idea that you have this exterior spiritual force that loves you and protects you.
Right.
And I buy into that. I've had too many weird incidences where I was in very serious danger. And when I pulled out of it, I was like, wow, if that hadn't happened and that hadn't happened, I would have been dead, right? And it happened like a number of times. So I kind of think that, and several people have told me, man, your guardian angel is watching over you. I got to tell you, people like high up in intelligence agencies telling me this. So I think that Cliff High is right linguistically, and you're right spiritually.
Right. And if you read Thinking in Destiny by Percival, I was just going through this again for another show on astrology that Julie and I are trying to put together. I was looking at this idea of the triune self or the triune human, and if we have 12 of these doers, I wonder if perhaps this idea of angel is not one of our other doers, perhaps in another dimension, also looking in on us. So that'll be for another show, guys. But yes, I do agree, and I think Jay agrees here. We were talking about the Nephilim version of the evolution for mankind. That's a whole other subject matter. Okay, thank you, Jay, for correcting me on that. Julie, next. Okay, the genius quatrain itself here as an example of the recurrence of this genius character here throughout Nostradamus's work. Let's use this one here as an example to show the audience members what we were talking about here and how perhaps we can plot this in time also.
Yeah. So I'm sure, Jay, you'll have many more things to add to my interpretation of the quatrain. But it's, yeah, as JC said, it's one of the many where he does talk about this genius character. So he goes like that: the moon in the middle of the night over the high mountain. So in Dolores's canon book, he mentions that would be the space station that we're going to build with our new technology. That's a moon over the mountain. But from an astrological standpoint, I also related the moon with our intuition, and altitude is ruled by Aquarius. So it's like us being able also to see from a higher perspective through our open third eye chakra. Also, he did say the young wise man alone with his brain has seen it. So to me, that relates to this genius character being very intelligent, and that's the Aquarian archetype. So the Aquarian uses his higher brain and his ability to download information, which is ruled by Uranus in astrology, getting downloads, also getting communication from your guides, from let's say higher densities, other dimensional. So that's all Uranus. Also, he said, invited by his disciples to become immortal. So that one is very interesting. So to me, and there's probably a lot more that I didn't write there, but disciples both alludes to the age of Pisces, because also we've got the Jesus disciples, but disciples as a concept is also the community. And community is a theme that's very much Aquarian. So I think he talks here about this transition from this religious disciple as being a more community-focused Aquarius archetype. And also the immortal is another concept with the water bearer. So the water bearer distributes sacred knowledge, the waters of life, the drink of immortality, through sharing sacred knowledge. So that's very much also of an Aquarian theme. And then he wrote his eyes in the middle, his hands on his breast, and his body in the fire. So there's many interpretation of that one, but to me, it speaks about harmonizing the mind and the heart. So very much going on the right timeline for this age of Aquarius. So seeing, having this third eye chakra open, but also connecting with the heart, because he says his hands on his breast, and using his body as a spiritual tool, because fire deals with spirituality. So I think that's one of the quatrains where he's talking about this transition to the age of Aquarius and this genius that we're all going to embody.
Mm-hmm. Jay, what would you add to that in terms of merging the heart and the mind, also left brain, right brain? We're all being tasked here to collapse these polarities or these duality in this particular matrix. How would you bring that to the conversation for the audience members?
Well, I think that what's really going on is that the masculine forces on Earth, the men, are beginning to realize that our past actions probably weren't very wise, because they weren't guided by anything that had to do with the heart, and all the terrible things that men have done over the last 2,000 years. And I think, I hear it in the language. I bet Cliff High hears it in the language too. There's a softening of male rhetoric recently, where we're not as ready to be violent or to use violent rhetoric anymore. Now, I'm not saying all males. There's still a whole subgroup of males that are really love to use it. But the wiser ones are beginning to realize that this is not helping. All of this rhetoric of violence and all that is not helping. And so there's a softening of the heart. And of course, the women have to lead the way because they're the creatures of the heart, not men, although we have heart. And they are. And the women are leading the way. You know, the French Revolution, they tried to get the French Revolution going for like 25 years. But when food prices started going up and the mothers got involved, then stuff happened. And I think that that's what's going to happen here. The men are trying to get something to change, but we're not really affecting much change. But I think now the women are seeing that they have to get involved in this big shift and change on a real level where they're down in the trenches, and they're doing it. And at least here in the United States, and it's beginning to have it's terrifying the Pisceans, I can tell you that.
Yeah, terrifying. Tron says, Jay is probably the most intelligent guy on the planet. Much respect. Thank you, Tron. I appreciate that comment. I'm sure Jay does as well. Thank you, MP, for the great comments. And Jeff says, JC, this show is so important. Please make a copy. Yes, just in case. You never know what can happen here on YouTube. Okay, yes, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. And yes, I'm making an extra copy of this for sure. Where do we go from here, Julie? I mean, we've pretty much exhausted the slides that we wanted to share. We've brought up all of these concepts. Is there anything now based on some of the astrology that is current before us? I know we're in this Saturn-Uranus square, this last battle right now. We are right now between these two big eclipses, the October 25th and the November 8th eclipse coming up. How do these astrological tensions kind of put into focus here the conversation today, and what perhaps people can glean is their part in this particular battle here between the centralized forces and the decentralized age of Aquarius? What would you add to that?
So very interestingly, this square that you were mentioning between Saturn and Uranus that we're experiencing right now, and I would say maybe until the end of the year, it's still an orb. Very interestingly, Saturn and Uranus both rule the sign of Aquarius. So it's like an internal Aquarian battle between the two paths that are opening up to us. So this choice to reconnect with the organic and divine nature, which is more Uranus, but also the Saturnian aspect of Aquarius, which is digital ID, being controlled through technology, AI, all of that. So I think it pertains to this WAR energy that we're feeling. Mm-hmm. So that's the first point that I'd like to share with you. And also, as a bringer of hope, next year we're going to have Jupiter conjunct the North Node for 2 months during the summer. So Jupiter, it's like having a renewed faith in the universe, but also being drawn to philosophy, spirituality, higher knowledge. So, and North Node represents what's going to gain value for us as a collective. So I think this will open up a whole new level of people being drawn to spirituality, wanting to read books, wanting to go with different courses. But I think this is going to be probably a game changer as of this choice that we're experiencing right now with the square.
It's funny you mentioned in the summer, because in some of the Webbot data predictions here, Cliff was talking about next spring as a period of time where we're in the big ugly now, as he describes. All of this is all coming out for people to see and digest and vomit and freak out with all of this and ugly information. But what he was saying was that sometime in the spring, we would start getting our footing again, seeing as maybe in the last year or so, we were deep in the woo. There's nothing was true anymore. We couldn't how do you say it? Hang our hat on anything solid, but perhaps in the next spring we would start seeing now the direction of humanity. So it makes sense that you're seeing this flipping sometime in the summer. We would see the precursors of that in the spring. Jay, what do you make of that too, and the people that you're seeing now? Like, we're at peak insanity, whether that's politics or financial markets. Everything's absolutely crazy. I'll just say the agendas for here on YouTube here, the agendas of division, I'll call it that way. It's all at peak levels right now. Do you also feel that we're almost at the end of that, and perhaps maybe just over the crest where the pendulum is starting to go on the other side? What do you feel personally, and what do your friends talk about when you guys meet together to forecast a little bit here what's happening for humanity?
Well, remember, if Hans Jenny's work, where you put fine powder on top of a metal plate and put frequencies through it, and then geometries would be created. Then when he changed the frequency, there'd be this mess of chaos, and then it would form back into another form of geometry. You know that work? Hans Jenny, cymatics, right?
Yeah.
We're in the mess right now. We were in one frequency, and they've turned the universe turned the frequency, and now we're in the chaos before we reorganize into a new structure. And so, yeah, I would say around mid next year, we're going to start forming the new structure. And what mother is, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So we're going to, because we have to do it. It's not something that we want to do necessarily, but we have to do it. And so we will. We're creating new economic forms, new educational forms, and everything is going to be changing into something completely different. And it's going to be more holistic, more spiritually based, and it's going to be able to, it's like what Julie said, it's the age of Aquarius. It's water. Water flows everywhere into every depth, and that's what's going to happen. You cannot stop the flow of water. And that's what's going to happen. It's going to flow everywhere. There's nothing they can do to stop it, but they're still trying because they don't understand it. You got to understand, they don't get it. It's like trying to explain sex to a eunuch. It's impossible.
I was going to say another joke on that, but it'll get me in trouble on YouTube. Jay, speaking of getting into trouble, you and I got into trouble with this Decoding Kubrick series. Through much work, I was able to reconstitute all of the 4 episodes that you and I had produced 2 years ago that were deleted from YouTube. They're now available on BeyondMystic.net. But I wanted to share with the audience here, of course, you can get one episode at a time, guys, if you want to check it out, or you can just go with the series there, and there's a 10% discount code here for today. But Jay, let's talk about Kubrick and what he knew about this alchemical process, the warnings he gave us with AI. If we look at 2001 Space Odyssey, the warnings he gave us about the people who hurt children in Eyes Wide Shut, and also this whole idea of the moon and the space program here with The Shining. We went into full decoded of all of that, but spend a few minutes here to explain to the audience why perhaps it's time to go back and relook at what perhaps Stanley was trying to tell us, and perhaps why he was killed for trying to tell us these things. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, if you go to Reality Check on YouTube, I have I do a full voiceover of the movie 2001. It just came up a couple months ago, and I must say, I did it almost 15 years ago. I found the audio and I put it up, and I was pretty close to being exact even then. And so what Kubrick did was, he was an outsider filmmaker. And he got taken into Hollywood when he made Spartacus. And then he got noticed after Dr. Strangelove by the people that run the world. And they realized that he was a really smart guy. And they took him in. And of course, he did their bidding in the Apollo program and got to make his great movie 2001 as an R&D for that program. And after that, he was kind of accepted in to this, not as a high level. He definitely tells you in Barry Lyndon and in Eyes Wide Shut that no matter who you are, if you aren't born into that group, you can't get into it. So he knew he wasn't born into the group. So he made films about the angst of not being able to go to the top because of who he was. And then he made films exposing them. And every film actually is an exposure of them. Whether it's Eyes Wide Shut or Full Metal Jacket. Listen to the names of his movies. Full Metal Jacket. We're trapped in a full metal jacket. Eyes wide shut. Our eyes are open, but we can't see anything. The Shining, which he didn't come up with, but it's a great title. And we see that Kubrick really was trying to warn us what was really going on, and we should heed his warning. It's no doubt that the day he died was 666 days before January 1st, 2001, which was his most famous film. So you got to wonder if there isn't some kind of ritual magic going on around here. And I think there is. In fact, the older I get, the more I realize that we are literally in a magical war between two forces, and they're using magic. And movies are one of those magical apparatuses.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, talking about 666, and what was that song in the 90s? Things that make you go, It does make you think, for sure. Guys, this is the coupon code, Kubrick 10. We'll give you 10% off here, the whole series. And again, you can try it pay-per-view per episode as well if you want to give it a try. And thank you, everyone, for supporting us doing these shows. It's really, really cool. And thank you to all of you who helped me reconstitute these old videos that we had lost from the first YouTube channel. I'm really excited to be able to share that with you. A lot of people in the chat saying today, oh, wow, make a copy of this episode. Yes, I will. That's just how it is. Julie, before we go also, and I'll ask Jay for last words of wisdoms before we go at the end of the show also, but talk about past lives here and how understanding and maybe spending time reviewing some of our past lives, we can find here these archetypes of the genius and the Antichrist, and how those created blockages that we're dealing with in this particular incarnation, and why it might be helpful to go back and visit some of our past lives, and what you have for the audience members also at BeyondMystic.academy. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I discovered personally that this community, I'm pretty sure we all had past lives. Some people call it parallel lives, future lives, whatever you want to call it, past lives, as people, let's say, in very much the religion. So nuns, priests, monks, all of it. So that comes with a lot of blockages around a couple of different topics for sure. So I feel like the exploration of past lives, especially around the topics of this age of Pisces that's been very much tweaked in our disadvantage, I feel like it's very important that we revisit those lives where we made vows of poverty, vows of chastity. So many different things that might block us in this incarnation, trying to make this transition into the age of Aquarius and to rebalance everything that's been disbalanced. So I feel like it's very important that we look into our past lives. And we just created a course on the Academy, so BeyondMystic.academy with Sophie. And through this course, she teaches basically different techniques in order for you to revisit past lives, change your soul contracts, remove those blockages. So she uses a couple different tools because we're all different and we all see past lives in different ways. So there's a meditation in there, a guided meditation. There's also the use of cards, if you like oracle or tarot cards. There's a use of your south node in astrology, if you like astrology, and also many different tools for you to get clues about your past lives and also move ahead in this incarnation.
Okay, very cool. And guys, for today too, I believe this is valid, yes, till November 4th. Past Lives 10 is the coupon code. It'll give you 10% off of this amazing course with Sophie. And you can also book a personal reading with Sophie there on Maison Jupiter.com. And speaking of the past lives here, very quickly, before I go back to Jay, we're being asked here to reconnect with our higher selves and to speak our truth as we move into the age of Aquarius. And for a lot of us, that's very difficult because we might have been witches in those past lives and been burned for doing exactly that work. So yes, this course is very apropos in these specific times. Anything else you want to chime in on that, Julie, before I ask Jay for the last words?
Oh yeah, but for sure that was my personal experience. So I did get the message that I've been a witch and sometimes an initiated from past lives and let's say those sacred knowledge. So in this incarnation for me, my North Node is in my 10th house in Gemini, so South Node is in Sagittarius. So I had to come out of this, let's say, spiritual cage and try to share knowledge as much as I could. But at first it was very hard for me. So for sure, this is a work in progress for all of us.
Well, on behalf of the Beyond Mystic audience and myself, I'll say you're doing a fabulous job, Julie, getting back into the witch and sharing all of this amazing esoteric information for audience members. A big thank you to you, Julie, and to all of the research you provide on the channel. Big thank you, Julie. Jay, last words of wisdoms here again in the choice that is before us. What would you say to your audience members, and also let them know what's coming up on Reality Check on YouTube and what perhaps new series and new interviews are coming up that you want to bring to their attention?
Yeah, quick story. When I was 15, I had a terrible dream where I was chained to a wall like this. And a priest was kept asking me questions that I didn't know the answers to. And finally, he brought in a guy with a sword that had like a crescent blade on it. And they crossed me here. And I watched all of my insides fall out. And I woke up, terrified. And then when I was in college, I was studying the Malthus Maleficorium, which is the torture book of the church. And there it was. If you got a warlock, what you do is you get him with the crescent blade. I was like, whoa.
Wow.
Right? So I got completely flipped out by that. But yeah, also at Gaia, I always found that Past Life series really did well, really well. I mean, like always at the top of the charts. Always. But as for me, you can find me at Reality Check on YouTube, jweidner.com for my articles, and Sacred Mysteries for my videos, and Gaia.com has my videos up too, including Infinity, which is about past lives. So we come back a full circle.
Full circle indeed. Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you so much, Julie. Of course, this was episode 2 of Nostradamus, the Vortex of Time. Perhaps in another 3 or 4 weeks, we'll get to episode number 3. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And join me in a couple of minutes here. I'll be live with Janine for the Jean-Claude and Janine Rumble show starting at 4 o'clock Eastern, live, free, and hopefully still uncensored for a while. You never know, things are pretty crazy out here in social media land. I love you guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
See you.
Au revoir.